This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 336 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm, as always, your host, Stefan Butzko, for today, and we will overhype the 5-0 cup win against third-tier side MSV Duisburg on this episode and preview Saturday's Topspiel against Borussia Mönchengladbach. And for all that and more, joins me Matthias Zug. Hello, Matthias. How are you doing?
Hello, Stefan. I'm doing well because it's not snowing this week in Colorado. How are you doing?
I'm so glad that we're getting a basically weekly weather updates by Matthias Zug. I feel like I need to get a jingle for that, like weather update by Matthias Zug.
Yeah, it's replaced the rant because the season hasn't started yet. So all I have is the weather.
Yeah, and the 5-0 win against Duisburg. So I don't think there are too many things to rant about that either. Also here, and I don't know if he's full of snow or full of rants, we will see. Abel Messeros. Hello, Abel. How are you doing?
Yeah, no snow. I think rants are, I don't know, Matthias's forte on this podcast. But yeah, thank you so much for inviting me again and ready to talk about Duisburg, of course.
Yeah. Everyone is allowed to rant on this podcast. Just as a disclaimer. That being said, before we rant, Abel, please, for our new listeners, introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Abel Messeros. I'm Hungarian-American who actually is a lifelong sort of Dortmund fan, and I'm a TV analyst for AMC Sport 1 in Hungary, and I write for a variety of sites, and I have a newsletter which is called the Bundesliga Bulletin on Substack, and occasionally I am invited to this podcast to great enjoyment by everybody, but mostly me.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for doing that. Usually it's my job to do it, but everyone has such a long vita that I never know what to say and what not to say, so I'll just force everyone to do it themselves. So people also know the voice behind it. Very, very smart, I know. Anyway, on to our sponsor segment.
Wir sind komplett schuldenfrei. Wir zahlen keinen einzigen Euro an Zinsen.
All right, so this episode is sponsored by Jordan Hunt. He wants everyone to know that he is very excited about Jude Bellingham and how he will fare this season. And Jordan sends his regards to everyone who is listening to this show, and Lars and Konstantin, Matthias, Abel, and your favorite host. So thank you, Jordan. And if you want to be a sponsor for an episode, get a shout out, go to patreon.com/theyellowwall for more information. And due to our patrons thanking us with their financial support, we have the time and space to do cool things like this as we dive into the Duisburg segment.
On his 100th Dortmund appearance, Jadon Sancho breaks the deadlock from the spot. Hazard, lovely back heel to Jude Bellingham on his debut for his debut goal for Borussia Dortmund. Deflected off the wall, it's found the top corner. Picked that one out from Torgan Hazard. It's 4-0 Dortmund, and Giovanni Reyna's got in the goal-scoring act. Well, here is the moment everyone's been waiting for. Marco Reus marking his return, taking over the captain's armband. Here is Marco Reus fresh off the bench to make it 5.
Yeah, that was James Thorogood you heard there, who is now commentating the Dortmund games and on the international feed, I think alongside Patrick Ovomoyela this time. And obviously people do know him from Bundesliga famous podcast Talking Fußball, and a podcast where also Abel is featured. Anywho, let's move on with the game. And what we saw this time was the very first lineup of the season, obviously. We had hits and goal. We had Akanji, Hummels, and Can on the back three. And then we had Hazard as a wingback and Bellingham, Witzel, the double pivot, Meunier on the right side as a wingback. And then we had Sancho, Reina, and Haaland. A very exciting lineup. Matthias, your initial thoughts and reactions to the team sheet?
Berlin, wir fahren nach Berlin. I think everybody heard that Duisburg fan, right? Who was singing that? No, I thought it was interesting team sheet. It's the right time to kind of try something out. I mean, when you're playing, I mean, they played 60 minutes against Duisburg a few weeks ago, in some weird made up cup thing. And it was 5-1, so this was a better result. Jude Bellingham, I thought it was interesting to start with him, but it obviously proved the right choice. I thought it was a thoroughly deserved good match and victory. What I thought was interesting was James Thorogood, asking Uwe Muyela, so what are the positives that Duisburg can pull from this game? And Uwe basically said, nothing, absolutely nothing. They need to just pretend like it never happened, because really everything went wrong for Duisburg. I almost felt bad for them.
Almost. I mean, there's just not much positives to say about Duisburg in general, especially the city. It's one of the ugliest towns, only second to Gelsenkirchen in the Ruhr area. So, obviously a shame that they're playing in the third tier now. They nearly got promoted to second division, but then due to the Rona after that intermission, they sort of faltered. Which is kind of sad, but since Matthias didn't give too many reactions on that lineup sheet, maybe of players that are in or out, Abel, I'll just defer that one to you then.
Yeah, I mean, Hazard being the wingback is something you guys, I think, brought up in the last podcast, and I kind of nodded my head in agreement as I was listening to that he's got the requisite athleticism and discipline, and against at times like a team like Duisburg, which, basically didn't really have a lot of the ball. I think they had it with 25% possession, although, playing a man down, but very typical sort of, Zweite, Dritte Liga side that sits back, 4-4-1-1, 4-4-2, and tries to counter. It won't be a huge problem because Dortmund's just going to have the ball, and he can just basically be like a winger anyway. Like positionally, he's not going to be too further back. I kind of saw Witzel, prior to the red card, playing more in a deeper role, almost like a single pivot, and Bellingham played more like a number 8 who came back and collected the ball and, obviously progressed it through the zones. Sancho would do it sometimes as well. Again, there's, you already got a back three, and then they mostly just play with one striker, Vincent Vermey. It's almost superfluous to have too many of those guys back there. Meunier put in in the beginning, I thought he had really strong spells, and Dortmund seemed to attack down the right through Meunier and got in some crosses. Haaland to me had a pretty quiet game. I wouldn't say a bad game because he did get that red card, but aside from that, seemed like he was not. I mean, he was in good shape against in the Nations League, so I wouldn't say he wasn't in good form, but maybe he just wasn't up for it or whatever. And then, the game was pretty much over very quickly. Once the 30, I guess basically the red card and the Hazard deflected free kick, then it just seemed like it was an exhibition match after that.
Yeah, to me, I already felt over after the Bellingham goal, to be honest. When it was 2-0, I didn't really feel that Duisburg had too many chances to get back into this, because Dortmund just looked so dominant throughout the game. There wasn't really any minute they really let off, maybe in the last half hour or so. But otherwise, it was a very professional side. I mean, Emre Can said after the game, this is the sort of game where you can only lose. And Dortmund didn't do any of that. Matthias, I know it's only against the third tier side, and he's only 17 years old. So I really need to try to keep the hype as low as possible. And yet, it was really a very encouraging performance by Jude Bellingham.
Clearly, Ballon d'Or winner 2022. He played exceedingly well. I had to check myself a few times. Be like, are you sure he's 17-year-old child? Essentially, I mean, he can't drive a car in Germany, for crying out loud. But he played. His yellow card was kind of that childish frustration thing that if he's 27, he may not get a yellow card for kicking a ball that was out of play into the side netting. But overall, he played very, very well. Yes, against an inferior opponent. And that's why I thought it was a good decision for Lucien Favre to play him. It's the kind of game to get a certain rhythm built up because there are other players in the squad that can play centrally. They can just plug in. They have the experience with German teams and playing in Germany and playing with their other Dortmund teammates that Bellingham doesn't have yet. So I thought he played very, very well. I thought Gio Reyna played well. The combination was good there. And I'm not going to say I'm concerned for Julian Brandt because, it was basically 60 minutes against a 10-man third-tier side. But there is plenty to choose from there, which is kind of what we talked about last week already. So Bellingham played very, very well and very mature.
Yeah, I have to say, Lucien Favre after the game really praised Bellingham's ability to accelerate the game, and I think this is something that Dortmund obviously need, especially as a player that plays next to Axel Witsel, who can really slow things down on his day. Abel, do you think that the combination of Bellingham's playmaking style and ability and his defensive prowess, which we saw quite well already against Duisburg, he is good in counter-pressing, he knows how to tackle, he knows how to use his body, his anticipation is good, his positional play, he has already played a lot of professional games, I think 41 championship games or so, but nevertheless, for a 17-year-old, I think it's fair to say that's pretty outstanding. I've seen other 17-year-olds try to position themselves in central midfield and not do such a good a job. Do you think because of the combination of those two things, offense and defense, that he has really an edge in the long term over someone like Julian Brandt, who excels in the attacking department but might be lacking defensively, or Thomas Delaney, who obviously really can be a sweeper and a box-to-box player, but isn't the one who always plays the killer pass?
I jokingly, I think it was Luca, who former guest on this podcast, we were talking, and I jokingly sent to him a tweet saying something like, or a message saying like, Julian Brandt to Norwich in the winter or something, which is obviously really mean. But the amount of truth in that there is I guess non-zero, just in the sense of like how good Bellingham was, and it reminded me of like a Gundogan meeting like a prime money bender kind of mix of guy, as you mentioned, can do everything with the ball, and at 17, and it's like, yeah, it's Duisburg, but just the physicality is still there. The pressing is still there. Like they did come out strongly, and just the ease with which he plays and how progressive he plays. I think that's a really good point you made about Witsel, who to me had a good game, but he usually always has a good game in the beginning of the season. The athletic portion of the contest kind of ended early, but yeah, it was basically Bellingham's game. And was he? I don't know if I wanted to ask you guys, but like, what was the reason for the substitution for him? Was it just because of like being on yellow? Yeah, okay, yeah, because I think it's a commanding performance and something that obviously getting the goal, which was a little bit lucky, but obviously you need to be there in those situations. So that was great. I mean, I watched him a little bit, like pretty much because everybody knew he was signing for Dortmund, and he played like different positions, and a lot of times he played like a winger in a 4-4-2 at times. Sometimes he played centrally, but that's kind of the thing with him, is that it's like crazy that he's 17, just for like how mature he is. And typically, like, you don't really get a lot of, I guess, I mean, with Dortmund, you get some mature 16, 17-year-old central midfielders like Nuri Sahin or somebody, but he's also like just positionally really, really smart. And it's like, it's not that like you can't really like think of one skill that he has, but he just has like so many translatable skills in like ball progression, tackling, finishing, dribbling, 1v1 defending, just positional awareness. That like some like there are players that they're never going to get to that level where he's already at, which I think even like Bundesliga players, which is really, really scary.
Yeah, Konstantin mentioned on last week's episode that his finishing ability.
He shouldn't shoot.
Yeah, he shouldn't shoot. Obviously, that was a nice reverse jinx or jinx actually by Konstantin because he obviously scored. And as you say, it was a little bit lucky, but I think probably my favorite goal of the bunch, just because of the back heel and the build up by Hazard, was just a very nice goal to score, and it's very nice for him. Matthias, thoughts on Jadon Sancho taking the ball in his 100th, I think, professional game for Borussia Dortmund, taking a penalty? I was a bit surprised because I completely expected Haaland to take the shot after, I think, the handball or whatever it was in the box.
Yeah, I kind of expected the same, but Sancho brimming with confidence, can't really fault him, and I thought, Haaland would maybe like, no, I need to score a goal. But, I didn't read anything into it other than, it's not Haaland.
Well, Overmeuler said that this is
pitch.
Sort of part of Jadon Sancho trying to take more responsibility in this season.
That could be. I mean, stepping up, showing a level of maturity, because he's, with all the discussions around Manchester United, I think we can all feel pretty confident that he's not going anywhere this season, but that he's going after the season. So this is kind of putting him in that position where it may not be Manchester United, it may be a even bigger club. And so showing that he's maturing and can take on a leadership role, yeah, I can see that argument.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Just a quick observation. Abel, this was obviously the first time I thought Favre brought his A game, meaning that in the friendlies before we always saw like mixed teams.
Yeah.
I thought that the balance and structure of this team in a 3-4-3 system or so, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's very flexible in various shapes and forms, so over 90 minutes, and then switched around a little bit. But overall, before we talk about the substitutes, how did you like it?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, the only thing, because I was doing the TV thing for this game, and we usually just like request certain actions from the during the match, and there was only like one action where I think it was Ahmed Engin, who's like one of their wingers for Duisburg, who beat I think it was Can and Meunier maybe with one dribble, but it was basically they had a 2v1, and with Dortmund being in numerical superiority, but so that means that like the structure of the defense was good, but just individual quality got them, and that was really the only thing that they had, and maybe they ended up with another shot that I don't really recall, but whenever you have stuff like that and you keep the opponent to like 25% possession, and like I think they were limited to 4 crosses in a game, which just means that they're even like nowhere near in a position to even cross the ball from. And that means that your defensive
minus the one moment really where Hazard didn't calculate the long ball.
Yeah, exactly. But just like that just means that like just the counter pressing was so good. I think like Dortmund made 4 clearances on the day, which is like that's one of those. It just means like it was just never in Dortmund's box. I mean, I don't even remember like if Marvin Hitz was actually playing in this game. I mean, it says on the team sheets that he was, and I know that he was because of Bürki not being there, but I don't think we ever saw him like on camera or whatever. And that's I think it's an underrated part of the Favre defensive system, because I think we give him a lot of flack for like when it doesn't work, but it's also like and normally his teams are a lot more happy to allow shots, and I thought like that may be another change in approach. I think you guys talked about this last time about the pressing, that it's finally kind of there. And Favre is definitely not a pressing or high pressing coach, but it seemed like, and again, it could just be because it's Duisburg, but it seemed like that was super active and really really effective, and not even getting Duisburg to get into Dortmund half.
Yeah, we'll hold our breath for how much Dortmund will press or not press for the Gladbach game. I think that will be much more of an indicator, because the last game against Gladbach was where mainly I think it was Gladbach that was the team that pressed, and Dortmund was attacking, but not so much in the counter-attacking, even though I think the first goal by Hazard was scored off an interception or something like that. But back to the Duisburg game real quick, Matthias, because something not completely insignificant happened, and that was team captain Marco Reus returning to the field and then scoring within 3 seconds. That's just a positive moment. Any other things you can say about that, minus how great the assist and the technique by Reus was?
Well, just, he comes on and he's immediately switched on. I mean, the run from that set piece, it's like he was the only one who was awake in that area of the pitch, because the Duisburg players sure weren't accounting for him. And that shows in a matter of seconds why a healthy Marco Reus simply makes Dortmund a better side, because of those types of runs, the technique, the control, and the composure to score goals. So you saw everything that makes Marco Reus great in a matter of 3 seconds.
Yeah, but a quick comment on that facial hair.
Yeah, I declined to comment, but no, I mean, I don't know. I'm not the fashion expert, and I can't go facial hair, so obviously I'm jealous. But the interesting part is that, like, I was trying to think, and maybe you guys can help me with this, but like, when was the last time Dortmund scored so many, free kick goals and deflections? And I mean, I know you always talk about how Dortmund doesn't have a set piece taker, or I mean, maybe that's changed a little bit, but that was kind of my thing in this match, is that okay, maybe not the penalty, but the Hazard goal, the Reina one, and the Reus ones, like three of them in a row. I don't even remember. That might even happen in the season.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I was gonna make a joke about that. That it's kind of dumb of Dortmund to waste all their direct free kick goals for the first game against the 30th side. But yeah, you're right. I don't know. It's kind of weird to see Dortmund score a direct free kick in the first place. And yeah, I do count the penalty. So basically, it is 4 set piece goals or 4 dead ball goals, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it's nice. Not going to lie. I still don't know who the 3rd or 4th goal was attributed to that Reina/Witzel scored.
I think they gave it to Reina.
Yeah, which is obviously nice, and but I don't know what the rules are for these things. But nevertheless, nice for Dortmund to score in many different ways and forms. That's usually what a strong team is known for, that they find many ways to kill you. Matthias, before we move on to the Gladbach game, maybe a quick thought on Reinier's debut for Dortmund.
I thought he did well. I mean, he didn't necessarily overly stand out in my mind now that I'm thinking back on it. But yeah, it was, again, at that point in this type of match against this opponent with that scoreline, you may as well throw the kid in there and just kind of get a competitive match under his belt. So other than that, I don't really have a ton of thoughts on it, to be honest.
Yeah, neither do I really. I don't know if I started to snooze, but I don't really have many things to say. But if there's one quick note you want to say, then you can do so. If not, we'll just move on.
No, it's hard to make much of it because the game was already out of reach.
All right. So, yeah, moving on. Dortmund obviously hosts Gladbach on Saturday for the first match day. I think Dortmund had their first games against Gladbach with Tuchel and Bosch, if I'm not mistaken. Oh God, should have looked this up before I said it. But it's really is a top spiel because Gladbach right now are, to me, maybe the third or fourth best team in the division next to RB Leipzig and maybe a little bit behind Dortmund. But I assume that it will be a neck and neck race between Dortmund and Gladbach throughout the season because I really do rate them. That being said, first let's take a look at the personnel. Guerrero and Bürki are doubtful for Dortmund, and Lucien Favre said that he will be very careful with Marco Reus, so I assume he will feature in the squad, but won't play from the beginning. At the same time for Gladbach, Dennis Zakaria is out, so is Valentino Lazaro, and reporting back fit are Alessandro Plea and Marcus Thuram, so that's good news for Gladbach's attack. But before we talk about the game itself, I think it's worth noting that this is the first game where there will be some fans in the stand again. I'm not counting the 300 Duisburg fans that were handpicked, but there will be 10,000 fans and Dortmund fans sourced locally from the city of Dortmund. If so many apply for a ticket, that's how many people are allowed. And it's kind of funny that the last game that Dortmund played in front of a full crowd was also the game against Gladbach. So not much to make of that, other than it's nice to see. On the other hand, this is only allowed for, I think, for now, for 6 weeks as a test period, and the cities and local municipalities obviously have the last word on that, which is why the Bayern against Schalke game is still Geisterspiel. So it's going to be very interesting, but I'm very glad that this probably will defeat the fake crowd noise and we will get real-time reactions from actual people in the stands, and all just positive for Dortmund, I guess, since they're urging them on. It's going to be very weird in that aspect because it's still a long shot from a regular Dortmund home game, but it's something. So with all that being said, Matthias, what do you expect from match day 1 in the Bundesliga?
Well, aside from the demonic ghost game in Munich, I think for Dortmund against Gladbach, it's hard to say, honestly, at this point, what to expect. I think from a team sheet, with the absences that you had mentioned, I think probably go with the same starting 11 as against Duisburg, given that you can make 5 subs, so that helps the flexibility there if need be. Gladbach, I agree with you, are really, really good. And Thuram and Plea will provide plenty of problems for Dortmund defensively, just given their technique, their pace, their strength, their intelligence, their movement. You may as well start off against a really good opponent and really test yourself, all the while knowing that it's not a typical first match day because you didn't really have a typical summer in one of the most untypical years ever. But I expect this to be a very good match from the sense of competitiveness and quality matchup. I think honestly it could go either way, in my opinion. But it won't say much for how teams are playing in 10 weeks, just because things are a bit weird.
Yeah, that is very true. Aber Gladbach actually haven't really done too much to their squad. They have ousted or Tobias Strobel, I think, went to Augsburg. Fabian Johnson and Raphael, I don't know if they both ended their careers, but or retired. But they are out, so it's a bunch of really old guys. And in is Joy Scally, a right back from New York City FC. Hannes Wolf on loan, an attacking midfielder from RB Leipzig. And as I previously mentioned, Valentino Lazaro, who is a right winger on loan from Inter, but currently injured. So that's a big plus for Gladbach that Max Eberl, I don't know if it's due to the pandemic or not, but managed to keep his team together and has a very competent coach in Marco Rose to continue that work. So what do you make of them in that context?
Yeah, I mean, I think like obviously last season was a pretty huge success despite sort of the end that they had, and obviously leading the league for 9 or 10 weeks. Nobody really expected that from Rosa and René Maric and Zickler and all those guys in the staff. And Eber, long been one of the best sort of sporting directors, and with Champions League coming, I feel like it made a lot of sense to keep this squad together, and they probably didn't get the right offers. Obviously, it was hard to sell Zakaria because he was hurt. He still only started team training a couple days ago. Neuhaus to me was the other guy that I'm glad that they were able to hang on to. And obviously Thuram also finished the season injured. So they might have been a little bit fortunate because, if they have like a good group stage in the Champions League, which is, big if you know Gladbach's history, and playing this sort of double Belastung, or this sort of, playing in both competitions, then they could potentially make a lot more money from a lot of those guys. And I guess like I would have been a little bit more optimistic had it not been for some of the injuries that they have to start out the season. As you mentioned, Lazaro, but I think like Plea hasn't played yet. Thuram only played in the cup a little bit. Embolo got hurt by Ginter of all people in the Nations League match. So I think like because of those things, Benesh I think is not healthy as well. So because of those things, like there's a good chance that Embolo seems to be ruled out of the Dortmund game, and it seems like Plea and Thuram might not actually start, and they've been playing Patrick Herrmann up top, and Jonas Hoffmann is almost like a secondary striker with Stindl there as well. So that's much more manageable, and in that sense, this might be like a good time for Dortmund to play Gladbach. Although recent history has favored Dortmund, but it's certainly like one of the teams that I would not want to face.
Yeah, Gladbach, I think, have lost the last 10 games against Dortmund.
Yeah.
So, the longer streak goes on, the likelier it is to end. But that being said, I think it's going to be a super tight game. If you remember all the previous games, I think especially in the last season, Dortmund played them twice, because once in the cup, and I felt like at least 2 of these wins were not entirely deserved.
They were the worst team, yeah.
So that being said, obviously Gladbach did miss a lot of chances in these games, but it is also a team that I think suits Dortmund a little bit in the sense that it's a proactive team, and Dortmund actually gets spaces to play into, which they've managed to hurt Gladbach in the past. So yeah, I'm really intrigued to see what Rose will come up with. I mean, Herrmann, I think, may lead the line. I don't know if Hannes Wolf will start, and obviously Jonas Hoffmann is around, and I looked it up with Zakaria being out injured. Matthias Ginter right now is the most valuable player on this team, or healthy player on this team, according to Transfermarkt, with 32 million. So it's already notable from a Dortmund perspective what a development Ginter has taken, and what a good center back he has become since his tenure at Dortmund, where he wasn't awful, obviously, but he also wasn't good enough in Dortmund's views. So I think right now Dortmund would be happy to have a player of his quality on the team. So yeah, it's going to be interesting in many aspects. Matthias, do you think that Dortmund will, as you said before, field the same 11, and do you think that as we discussed earlier a little bit, play a bit more aggressively? Do we see more counter pressing, or is this more something we see maybe with the introduction of Reus later in the game, who I think always scores against his ex-club? So does Hazard, apparently.
Yeah, I don't know about being overly aggressive. That's not really Lucien Favre's style. He's obviously the Mr. Caution. and I expect it to be a cautious approach against a quality opponent. So I don't think there's going to be a ton of high pressing and counter pressing from the get-go. I think it'll be more to see how the match develops and maybe getting some of that space to open up for Dortmund to utilize the speed that they do have at their disposal to kind of run into that. But I do believe it'll be the same starting 11 as against Duisburg for Dortmund. So no surprises there. So yeah, I think that means Brandt is on the bench. Reus would be on the bench. Of course, very important. Wolf on the bench. But we'll kind of see. And as far as Bürki or Hitz, I don't know how fit Bürki is or will be at that point. I know Kika said that he should be back, but you never know.
Yeah, so Abel, first of all, I want to ask you if you have any key matchups in mind that listeners should look for where this match may be won or lost.
I mean, I think like there are a couple. Obviously, the Dortmund back three against, if it's like a Hermann, Hoffmann, Stindl, Hannes Wolf, that's not terrible actually from a Dortmund perspective. You can certainly do much work because like the big thing with Hoffmann and Wolf and Stindl is like neither of those guys are like something that you're really worried about destroying you 1v1. Patrick Hermann, yeah, still got a little bit of speed and good finishing, but if you're Dortmund, I think you're pretty happy that Plea and Thuram are not starting. And it sounded like what Rosa said at the press conference that like he doesn't want to wear those guys out and get them hurt, and I think that's a smart move just because of the nature of this season. Now every team is just going to be playing all these games right after each other. I think also the sort of double pivot for Gladbach, this Kramer Neuhaus, which I really think Neuhaus was maybe their best player once the Corona hit. He is a guy who I thought when you mentioned about Ginter being the most valuable player, I think I would pay more money for Neuhaus for sure, because he's a guy who can do everything. But yeah, and he's gotten better at defending. But I still think that's an area where if you're Dortmund's sort of you like that double 10 with like let's say it's Sancho or Reina or whatever, and Bellingham often joins there, you can maybe overload them and certainly overwhelm them. I think 1v1 like Kramer, he's maybe somewhat of a disappointing, player, probably more of a above average Bundesliga player, but not much else. And considering he started the World Cup final, and famous own goal, obviously, so maybe that could come in handy as well. But I think those are areas where you can do well, and as well as like Haaland against a Ginter and Elvedi, who have very good athletic qualities, but I still would take Haaland against most of those guys. So there's a lot of advantages to Dortmund. I think where they have some disadvantages is maybe the wings. And you guys talked about how Dortmund are very good in the center, and particularly with Stevie Leiner and Bensebaini if he plays. Those are really, really tough matchups because both of those guys can run all day and all night and will do that. And they're going to put a lot of pressure on Hazard, especially if he has to track back against Leiner. Like this might be, if Guerrero is at all fit, I would just play him more there. Although maybe you want to have more defensive possession because tracking Leiner is kind of hard because he's a guy who can just run. And same thing with Bensebaini. I would favor him over Meunier. So potentially those sort of wings are the problematic areas. But I think all other matchups are favorable to Dortmund.
Yeah, see, I'm glad your train of thought has actually led to a conclusion that Gladbach do have some areas where they can hurt Dortmund. Matthias, lastly, maybe in the cup match we saw the substitutions of Delaney, of Piszczek, Reus, Brandt, Heinier. If you have 5 substitutions and these are the players you can bring on, that tells me that you have a really strong bench. do you think this is another key matchup in the battle against Gladbach that Dortmund can just overwhelm, as Abel just said, Gladbach with more individual quality coming from the bench?
Yeah, I mean, if you take Thuram off of that and Plea, obviously, if they're going to be starting on the bench, then there's a lot of parity there to a certain point. But I feel like those are really the two only ones where you come on and they can make a difference and it's going in an attacking wise. Dortmund also have the ability to bring on players to shore up centrally and defensively, where I don't really see. I'm looking at just the who's on the squad right now for Gladbach and who's probably going to be on the bench. I don't see that type of player on the bench for Gladbach. But if Thuram and Plea are on the bench, you do have those difference makers coming for a change of pace and honestly higher quality than who's slated to start for Gladbach.
Yeah, against Oberneuland, Gladbach brought on Michael Lang, Oscar Wendt, Toni Janschke, and Traoré and Thuram. So it's not too shabby either. But Abel, that being said, how do you think the toolbox of Dortmund players available is for Favre this season? I know there are probably going to be a lot of injuries piling up soon, but we have players like Paslak now. We have Marius Wolf to add, and obviously Mahmoud Dahoud is back from injury. So before we knock this on the head, lastly, how do you think Favre can utilize and react to different situations in the game with that sort of roster?
I mean, I think you can, whether or not Guerrero starts, you can obviously always bring him in if let's say Hazard is not doing it, or as I think we mentioned, sort of maybe switching him, bringing him in for Meunier and putting Hazard as a right wing back. You can obviously use Wolf or Paslak. Maybe Wolf can be that sort of athletic counterpart to some of the Gladbach guys. I mean, he played a lot in preseason, a little too much for my liking. Although I mean, I like him as a person, but probably not the greatest idea if he's prominently involved in Dortmund season. And then Brandt, who is kind of the forgotten man, kind of the odd man out. He could still be a impact sub for sure. If because when you play 17-year-olds in midfield with Bellingham and Reina, maybe they're not gonna have consistency necessarily. And Brandt, although it doesn't seem like Brandt is as great as a sub, but you could do that. And then same thing with Tenier or Reus. Obviously, there's a lot of different options for Favre, even with there's 5 or 6 guys that are injured. So I still think that's a much more. It's a deeper bench. It's if Plea and Thuram are on the bench, that's maybe the top heavy part more so than Dortmund. But they really don't have anybody else. Whereas Dortmund, it's just a lot of quality, and I think that could be the difference in the end, just in a week 1 matchup.
Yeah, and speaking of a good bench, that's a good segue to Thiago, probably or most definitely. I think Rummenigge confirmed it today, leaving Bayern Munich, and since they're playing against the Royal Blues, we can stuff that discussion real quick in the Schalke segment. So, Matthias, Bayern are losing one of their best players, and the Bundesliga is losing one of the best players it has, which I think might help with the competitiveness. I don't know. I still think Bayern have too much for anyone else to reach them, but we've discussed a little bit. Their roster isn't the biggest, and losing Thiago is obviously a huge blow. Rummenigge said that he doesn't foresee buying another player, but I think Hansi Flick has pushed for one. So I know this is the Schalke segment, but how worse will Bayern be off without him?
Well, don't Bayern still have Cuisance?
Yeah.
I mean, he's amazing, right? No. I mean, Thiago, for me, is one of the best and has been for a number of years. I mean, think about it. He's been at Bayern since Guardiola. So
7
he's
years.
been there a long, long time. It doesn't seem like it's been that long. You know, when somebody mentioned that the other day, I went, no, wow, it's already been 7 years. He has this odd reputation as a hot and cold player. And kind of going back and looking at some of the stuff, I mean, yeah, everybody has an off match. I just don't think Thiago had that many off matches. And I think he was a little bit undervalued. I don't understand letting a guy like him go. I mean, yes, Leon Goretzka can squish him between his muscles. But at the end of the day, Goretzka is not Thiago in terms of playmaking ability. I guess, you know, Bayern's loss is Liverpool's gain. And I don't know if it's Dortmund's game or Gladbach or Leipzig. I don't know if it'll make that much of a difference. But like you mentioned, their squad depth, a couple of injuries, they're going to be in trouble, despite Hansi Flick being an extraordinarily good coach.
Abel, your 2 cents?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the build and basically almost even like German media agenda against Thiago, although there's obviously the backlash to that backlash now. But like I tweeted this out that, you know, in sort of psychology, there's the Amos Tversky, Daniel Kahneman. There's somebody came up with the behavioral economics. They came up with the Tversky intelligence test. It's basically the quicker it takes you to figure out that he's smarter than you, the smarter you are. And it's like the same thing with Thiago. The quicker it takes you to realize like he's one of the best players in football, like the more you know about football almost. So that tells you how much I rate him. But like to play the devil's advocate here, it's like he's 29 and he's injury prone, and he would have asked for like a 4-year deal when he enters age 30, and that's typically like, you know, not what you want to do, because maybe some of those years are going to be, you know, he doesn't play much, and you want to play Kimmich, right? Like you want to kind of hand the midfield keys to Kimmich, and they work great together. But just the way Goretzka came on, I think it was impossible to leave him out of the side. So already there were sort of concerns even in the Champions League final that were you going to play, you know, all of those guys, and Kimmich kind of, you know, solved that situation by, you know, being available as a right back, but that would have eventually been a problem. Now, Liverpool are probably, you know, to the extent that I think they were the best team in the world with Bayern right there, that they might have even overtaken them once again. So but yeah, I agree with Matthias that I think a lot of people made this point that Thiago never, like, you know, Thiago der nichts, right? Thiago or nothing was the Guardiola thing when he came on. And I was reading the book Pep Confidential, which is about his first season there. And I still think that rings true as much as it's become sort of a cliche. So I think, you know, it's obviously a good news for Dortmund and anybody else, because it's maybe like a glimmer of hope that you can catch Bayern, because like you mentioned the schedule, I looked this up, that they're going to play like 23 games in 95 days or something until the winter break. So it's like every 4 days. And this doesn't include the national team games or Nations League or whatever else they might play. So if there is a silver lining, it's that you might not do it with 14 players. And, you know, what happens if like Kimmich goes down, or, you know, some of those other guys, or they don't agree with Alaba, because there's a lot of contract negotiations there. So that's kind of the only thing I could see. But unfortunately, when you win the treble and you haven't lost the game in like, I don't know, 10 months or something, that's kind of the only things you can hope for, is injuries and scheduling and those kind of things. But it's still going to be a long shot before anybody catches them.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that Bayern's unbeaten streak actually dates longer than Schalke's winless streak, which is not that easy to do. But I think you make a good point, especially I feel like Joachim Löw will probably be a little bit more desperate down the road when it comes to international games and having to rely more on the Bayern block, because Germany right now aren't really performing that well. You know, I think as the urgency comes more and more into play, I think he'll also try to recall as many Bayern players as possible. But obviously, just a quick segment on that topic. Just to mention it for Schalke, they will be out. They will be without Sané and Nastasic for that game. So good luck, guys. Anyway, I think that's a good moment to wrap things up. So once again, you two, thank you for coming on and
predictions.
Yeah, that's what I was segueing to. So
okay, sorry, jumped the gun.
No,
there
it's
a
fine.
bit.
You can go ahead, Matthias, if you're so eager to get the first prediction of the season wrong or the second one. Go ahead.
I think it's going to be a 6-0.
Okay, for who?
Oh, sorry, for Bayern against Schalke. I thought we were still on.
Okay.
All right, yeah,
Nice,
okay,
nice.
No.
okay. I think someone on the Bayern team will actually score the extra point, so I'm gonna say 7-0. Abel?
Oh, for that one, I think they're gonna win by like 4-0 or something. Yeah.
All right, boring. Anyway, let's move on to the real predictions. Abel, how high are Dortmund going to win or lose against Gladbach, or will they draw?
I think they're gonna win, but it'll be like a 3-1 or something. I think it could be just because of what we discussed of where Gladbach are in this season, and they're kind of slowly finding their way back into it. And Dortmund seem to have, after what was a lackluster kind of preseason, they seem to have come out pretty strong. So I'll go with that.
All right. Abel has been sabotaged by the overhyping of the cup match. Matthias, what's your prediction?
I think it's going to be a tight match. I think Dortmund win 2-1, not necessarily comfortably. I think Haaland and Reus both score, but it's going to be tight. It's going to be close. And again, if Reus is scoring, he's coming off the bench. So a little bit of late drama, I think, in this match.
All right. I foresee a lot of high quality chances in this game on both sides, which is why I'm going to go with a 3-2 win, because I feel like the luck and the chance will say that both teams will be rather prolific in front of goal. So 3-2 from me. I'll keep my fingers crossed that Dortmund actually start with a W into the season. And now, Matthias, you can please tell our listeners how to get in touch with you on the Bird app.
You can find me on Twitter at Matthias Suck. That's MATTHIASSUUCK. And no, I'm not stuttering.
All right, Abel.
Yeah, I'm at BundesPL, and I just have that newsletter that I've been doing a lot of Bundesliga previews for, including one on Dortmund. Actually, did one on Gladbach as well, so that actually will be up a little bit later. But Twitter BundesPL.
Yeah, please check out the content that Abel is churning out, because it's very deep and informational. So please do that. Also, I think you just recorded with the one and only Konstantin Eckner.
Yep.
So
I can confirm that. Yep.
So please plug that as well if you want.
Oh, that will be coming out for Spielverlagerung, but that's up to Konstantin when that is. But it's basically like a more general Bundesliga preview, but given that the season starts tomorrow on Friday, so I think that should come out fairly soon.
Oh, so he interviewed you?
Yeah, we've been recording podcasts with him on like a couple of different leagues, and we realized that we hadn't done the Bundesliga. So we basically talked about the top four. I think some of the other interesting teams, like some moves. Like actually, we had a Schalke segment, which was great fun. I think we made some jokes at Schalke's expense. We ticked that box, and then did some other stuff on Union Berlin and some of the other things. But that should be out on Spielverlagerung's website, and we will share that on social media as well.
Yeah, making fun of Schalke is all I needed to hear for me to have this subscription. Anyway, you can find me on Twitter as well, at Stefan Butzko. You can find all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. And like I said before, if you want to contribute financially, read our paywalled written content that's usually written by me. Also for $1 a month, you can do that on patreon.com/theyellowwall. If you want to subscribe to this show in in the various means and way, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I think if you just hit the Yellow Wall or Yellowwallpod into the search engine or YouTube, you'll find it. Otherwise, you'll also find SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Spotify, iTunes, and whatnot. So, as always, thank you for listening, and we shall be back next week with the Gladbach analysis, and then, of course, the preview for the Augsburg game. I don't know if we'll squeeze in the Super Cup preview into this as well or not. That remains to be seen, but until then, thank you for listening, and good.